Just like movies, the sequels to popular devices have to meet higher expectations. You wanted to keep what worked well in the original, but without just being a rehash. That's the challenge facing the Kobo Elipsa 2E, and to see if it lives up to it, I've got a few questions. Let's see what answers I've found out. The Elipsa 2E's packaging is much more straightforward and simple than its predecessors. Gone is the huge box, and, if you get the new case, 2 smaller boxes replace it. The packaging is still every bit as sturdy as the first Elipsas, and Kobo has kept up its snazzy color scheme with these pleasing orange and teal color accents. It's nice that Kobo was able to slim the packaging down, and its claim that the Elipsa 2E is partially made with recycled plastic, including ocean-bound plastic. Anyway, you get the device itself, Kobo's signature threaded charging cable, the new Kobo stylus, and, nicely, some replacement tips for it as well. A word about the new stylus. Overall, I do think this is a nice improvement from the previous generation. The biggest physical changes are the new tips design, that the overall form is a bit slimmer than the first. It now recharges via plugging in a USB-C cable, and erasures are now made by just flipping the stylus and pressing the gray plastic eraser to the screen. The new stylus can attach magnetically to the main device, but this time there won't be as much of, this.
Oh.
Because the magnetic attachment of the stylus to the top of the device is considerably stronger than last time around. Now, about the device's new case. You'll note Kobo actually calls this a sleep cover, and that's pretty much all it is. While I had definite issues with the first Elipsa's bundled case and its considerable weight and unwieldy bulk,
bring on the tanks, right? But
that case did at least protect all sides of the device, could be used to prop it up to write at a different angle, and essentially was included in the price of the device itself. This, essentially half a case, only protects the front screen of the device, while the back of the unit is left entirely exposed. And it doesn't come cheap. It does attach fairly easily via magnets and holds quite sturdily to the device. As for the main device's design, the Elipsa 2E is basically the same handsome rounded rectangular device as the first Elipsa. The only really noticeable physical changes in the device's build are now that the power button is nicely textured with a kind of grip pattern. The back of the device has a textured plastic design, and the device is ever so slightly heavier than before, but I never found this to be very noticeable at all when holding it. Getting to the device itself, let's start with my first question for the Kobo Elipsa 2E. Did Kobo improve the front light? The answer to that question is a resounding mostly. Yes, the Kobo Elipsa does now have a color temperature adjustable front light. That's definitely an improvement on the first model, which only featured what I felt was an overly bright white color front light with significant blue hues also present. You can still match that original front light color on the new Elipsa if you want, but at least you now have a bit more choice. However, I feel the kind of range of color temperatures Kobo achieved here is a bit strange. There's something a bit off about the shade of yellow that the device produces, and it somehow comes across to me as being indecisive. As you can see here, the shade that the 2E produces is noticeably different from past Kobo devices like the Kobo Forma seen here. It's also different from something like the frontlight of the Onyx Books Note Pro. And I think both of those devices achieve a more pleasing maximum of a tangerine orange color. However, the frontlight of the InkPad X, a frontlight I really enjoyed, does look pretty similar to the 2E when placed next to it. I also recognize that this is an extremely subjective take on this, so you might find a different reaction to this color of light. The Elipsa 2E's frontlight does actually seem a bit brighter than the original Elipsa, as you can see here. Even with both devices at 50% brightness, this seemed noticeable. However, the new color temperature adjustments available mean that this shouldn't be as much of an issue now. Some of you may be wondering whether the Elipsa 2E's frontlight features PWM, or pulse width modulation issues, that so memorably plagued the Kobo Forma when it launched. You see, some people are sensitive to this kind of flickering effect, and some claim that it causes them eye strain. The answer is, nicely, no. This footage was filmed at 120 frames per second, and as you can see, PWM flickering does not appear to be a significant issue on the Kobo Elipsa 2E. Moving on to my next question for the Elipsa 2E, has Kobo improved its ebook reading experience? I'd say that the only real improvement here is the overall faster performance of the device, but that's not really a bad thing. Truth is that the experience of reading Kobo-bought ebooks on the first Elipsa was already so good, there isn't much that I can think of that needs improvement. All the things that the first Elipsa got so right about the ebook reading experience have stayed the same. Interestingly, I noticed that my annotations made on ebooks I had bought on the Kobo Elipsa transferred over to the same ebooks on the Kobo Elipsa 2E. This can be either convenient or potentially a little creepy, depending on which way you look at it. The one annoyance I did encounter is that it seemed like there were more unintentional page turns when I was trying to annotate my ebook, which isn't really a little issue per se, but I'm not too worried about this because ebooks seem to be Kobo's primary focus, and I assume they'll patch this issue at some point. But mostly, it's all good news here. You can still write directly on the ebooks themselves, something that, as of the filming of this review, the Kindle Scribe only seems to be starting to experiment with, and in a limited way at that. Text on the device looks really nice and crisp, and maybe even slightly more so than the first Elipsa. Of course, basic ebook options like font size and type, line spacing, and margin controls are all here. There's the easily accessible settings menu that lets you control a variety of settings, from changing the areas of the screen you tap to input commands, all the way to implementing Darkmode on ebooks. Kobo's really nice and simple page jump slider bar and page preview navigation system are also here as well. Everything works really well, and the page turns are very fast. You can also tap on images in books to open a dedicated image viewer in order to zoom in and get a closer look. This also works impressively fast for a non-GPU powered e-ink device. Additionally, the pinch to zoom font size adjustment option also acts as a quick way to resize your fonts without opening the main font menu. Making a very welcome return is the fantastic and filterable annotation and bookmark list. Table of contents support, and Kobo's comprehensive word search tool. And my personal favorite innovation from the Elipsa has also made a return. If you've written an annotation and adjusted the font size so that the device can't adjust your handwritten text to match it, you'll see a bracket around the same area of text. Tapping this will display a screenshot of your original annotation, as well as the option to revert the ebook settings to the same settings you had when you originally made that annotation. Simple, elegant, brilliant. And lastly, long pressing on text will either try to define the word, or you can long press and slide your finger to highlight text and or add a typed note. However, you can't write in these note boxes with the stylus. Not sure why that is really. So in general, the ebook experience on the Kobo Elipsa 2e is every bit as good as on the first Elipsa, just faster. It's on to question number 3. Did Kobo make PDF reading and annotations any better? The answer is yes. It does seem like Kobo has been listening with at least half an ear to some of the criticism around PDF handling on the first Elipsa. Page turns are very fast, and maybe even a bit faster than on the first generation Elipsa in some cases. Notable improvements include a considerably faster and more responsive pinch to zoom ability, and Kobo has indeed already improved this on the first Elipsa via recent software updates, but it's even better on the 2e. In fact, it's fast enough that it kind of put the Remarkable 2 to shame in this respect, which is odd because I recall the Remarkable 2 being faster than this, but here we are. However, it still causes some jarring animations of the text on the document when zooming. Also, many times when you try to pinch to zoom, the 2e seems to skip you directly to the most zoomed in level immediately. So, still a ways to go before it's perfect, I'd say. In another useful update, you can now set a zoom level on a document and then can turn pages while maintaining that particular level of zoom. Depending on the document type, this could be massively useful to some people, and it's something that I think a lot of Kobo owners have hoped for. So those are two pretty big improvements on the PDF reading front. Rounding out the plus side of PDF reading modes, like when reading KoboBot ebooks, you still have the handy page jump slider bar, bookmark and annotation list, word search, and table of contents tools. You also, again, have the option to rotate the device to rotate the screen and get a slightly wider screen area to read your PDF documents. So what about writing on PDFs? Has that gotten any better? I so wanted to say that Kobo had learned their lesson from the first Elipsa's initially terrible writing on PDF experience, but I don't think I can say that wholeheartedly. The good news, I'd say that 2 times out of 3 you can hope to actually write on a PDF document without the device skipping you ahead or behind by a page or unintentionally zooming in. Sometimes the Elipsa 2e performed near flawlessly, and at those times I felt as if I could doodle practically all day on a PDF without it glitching or jumping me to the next screen. The bad news. The Elipsa 2e still does these things about a third of the time. I'm putting my palm on the device, see, and there we get a page turn, an unintentional, very annoying, go away, it needs to go. Okay, now we're doing unintentional zooms, which is sensitivity, okay, so, and reliability. That's a huge thing. Another annoying quirk is that, quite often, the page jump menu and top menu options popped up when I didn't ask for them. Not only does this block off significant parts of the screen and prevent you from writing on them at that time, but it also greatly increases the danger that your wrist may activate the page navigation bar and jump you to some other page in your document. Not great. However, there is reason for hope, as by about the first quarter of this year, Kobo had really improved their palm cancellation on the Elipsa 1, to the point that you could practically doodle all day on a PDF page and you'd stay on that particular page. So they definitely can and probably will improve this via future software updates. In a missed opportunity, Kobo has yet again neglected to let users have any choice of what type of pen they can annotate their PDFs with. You still only get one type of pen. How is this kind of oversight even possible on a device which features not one, but two different notebook modes featuring several types of pen to use, which exist on the same device? However, I will note that at least Kobo still lets you write on PDFs that you yourself load onto the device without first using any kind of send to device app or service, unlike Amazon's approach so far with the Kindle Scribe. Another baffling and I think pretty huge misstep from Kobo is at the previous device's ability to define nearly every word I threw at it in PDFs, even image-based PDFs, is just gone on the Elipsa 2E. You can still long press on different words in KoboBot ebooks to get definitions, but in PDFs, you get nothing. No definitions at all. Even when I tried this on PDFs that the first Elipsa had handled like a champ, the 2E just wouldn't do anything. Sadly, as I pointed out in my third look review of the first Elipsa, it appears Kobo has also taken this ability away from that device via recent software updates. I really did enjoy this feature, and I can see no reason why Kobo would actively shoot itself in the foot like this. I mean, what are they trying to do? Get people angry at them? So what about annotated PDFs? Do they still export with the jagged looking dot collection lines I noticed on the first Elipsa? Very simply put, yes. This hasn't changed at all. Right down to the strange fact that you have to move your annotations in order to make the lines look smoother. On a Mac, these lines could be moved, but this doesn't seem to smooth them out at all. I could kind of excuse this on the first Elipsa because Kobo was treading new ground for one of the big ebook retailers. However, to have simple PDF annotations show up like this on their second generation flagship e-reader, that's just bad. This shouldn't be a problem. It isn't for Onyx Books devices from several years ago at that. It isn't for the Remarkable 2, and it even wasn't for the granddaddy of all these large screen annotation e-readers, the Sony DPT S1 from nearly 10 years ago. So what I'm trying to say is I don't see any excuse at all for Kobo not to have improved this. So this is another big miss in my opinion. Alright, so PDF improvements have been a little scarce so far. What about that odd image squashing effect I noticed when testing how the original Elipsa handled my large 58.7 megabyte PDF test? Is that at least any better? There is some good news to report here. The Elipsa 2E does still do this odd image squashing sometimes, but it is considerably faster at correcting it than on the first Elipsa. Page turns generally were noticeably faster than the first Elipsa when flipping through this image-heavy PDF, which is a nice improvement to see. However, even here, Kobo is just barely keeping up with the competition. The device still isn't quite as fast as the Onyx Books Note Pro, a device from 2019, by the way. And to my utter amazement and shock, even the Pocketbook InkPad X, a device known to be a little bit on the slower side for most tasks, generally managed to load these images faster than the Elipsa 2e. So in general, the Elipsa 2e is faster than the first Elipsa, but Kobo's not setting any speed records here either. If you're getting a bit frustrated with the amount of things Kobo hasn't fixed about how their device handles PDFs, that's me too. Well, you might ask, did Kobo at least improve Darkmode when reading PDFs? The answer is kind of yes and no, and even the yes part is qualified. I would say that reading PDFs in Darkmode is probably slightly easier now thanks to the device's new frontlight color options. However, because the frontlight is still so bright, it still isn't as good as I think it needs to be. In a dark reading environment, I found any frontlight brightness setting beyond about 10% still flooded the black areas of the screen with too much light, and it became distracting. And as for images in PDFs when reading in dark mode, yep, they're still inverted. Once again, this is different from images in KoboBot ebooks where, even in dark mode, they are displayed correctly. It has been pointed out to me that there may be programming difficulties in getting this right in PDF documents, and I think that's certainly a valid point to make. However, I'm pretty sure that this can be fixed, as certain Onyx Books e-readers have offered the ability to custom tune the contrast of images separately from text in PDF documents in the past. And I'm not sure why Kobo couldn't do that here. And it's on to question 4. Has Kobo improved their notebook modes on the device? The first Elipsa introduced basic and advanced notebooks to write and draw in. I found these to be creative and unique, but they were also quite basic, buggy, or just plain badly thought out at times. So I was keen to see if Kobo improved these at all. When creating a new notebook, Kobo has added the addition of the option to create folders to organize your notebooks. You can even create subfolders within other folders. This is a welcome change, and it's a nice option to have. Kobo has made some very minor improvements here. For one thing, you can actually now access the frontlight adjustment menu in this mode. That was a weirdly big oversight on the original Elipsa, so I'm glad they fixed it. Kobo has greatly expanded the number of page templates you can choose from, and that is a nice improvement over the original Elipsa's almost comically small variety on offer. There's also a new lasso selection tool. It's nice that it's there, but this tool is really basic. It does allow one to circle a drawing or word and then move this around the page pretty quickly, but that's it. No copy option, no paste option, no size adjustment, nothing. This is surprising because these tools have been implemented much better on other e-readers for a while, including, yes, the Remarkable 2. Note to Kobo, when you're playing software catch-up to the Remarkable 2, that's not a good position to be in. Otherwise, this is essentially the same notebook experience from the first Elipsa. One other unfortunate legacy carried over from the first Elipsa is the menu design. and it's not good. The most annoying thing about this setup is that A. The pen type and line thickness menu is hidden and can only be accessed by tapping this tiny arrow at the top of the screen, and B. When you do have the pen type menu open, the bottom page navigation bar pops up for some reason too. So, whenever you want to change your pen type or line thickness, you have to sacrifice a good portion of your device's screen to menus at the top and the bottom. And the navigation bar stands a good chance of accidentally jumping you to the next page if your wrist presses it accidentally. So, yeah, pretty badly implemented. I think Kobo has, again, forgotten that ease of use is one of the things that makes people want to use something. The only other bit of good news I can report here is that the exports of this test basic notebook did export quite well, using each of the available PNG, JPEG, and PDF file types which are available. Which, if you recall what I said about the poor quality export of handmade annotations on PDF documents, is all the more puzzling. Just look at the difference in quality between the two. And they're generated by the same device, Kobo. My advice would be to get your programming house in order. Okay, so what about the advanced notebook? Well, you have similar options to the basic notebook, except you actually have less in the advanced notebook. Yeah, I know it doesn't make much sense. You only get one default page background and you no longer have the highlighter pen type option to work with. The Elipsa 2E does give you a new line spacing adjustment option, but it's not so accessible as you need to go through two menus just to set this. I mean, come on guys, hire a UX designer. How hard could this be? For those who skipped the first Elipsa device, the advanced notebook is considerably different in concept from the basic notebook. This mode is more like some kind of AI-assisted workbench than a plain notepad. It allows you to convert handwritten notes to text by double tapping them, in theory anyways. You can also add spaces by swiping down with the stylus between words, and delete space by swiping up, and highlight words by circling them. There are times when this mode can pleasantly surprise you. Just look at how the advanced workbook even allowed me to use the gesture options to accurately split up my handwritten sentence and then reattach it together. The device had to decide where these characters, made in one contiguous pen motion by me, should be split, and I think it did a pretty good job. The problem is, once again, the experience is just too finicky. Sometimes it will do really well at translating your handwritten sentence, but other times, not really. The same can be said with the different spaces you can insert into the advanced notebook to create drawings, diagrams, math equations, and freeform drawing areas. They're back again on the Elipsa 2E, and that's nice, I guess. They can all be impressive at times, but they still are far too glitchy and sometimes a bit too slow to be considered as truly useful tools to write down your thoughts or even take notes. Starting with the insert drawing option. This is great to have, but the fact that you only have a few different line thicknesses and pen types to work with, only some of those have any pressure sensitivity at all, and none of them have true tilt sensitivity to mimic shading, means that even the best artist will face an uphill battle trying to draw in this mode in any kind of meaningful way. Moving on to the diagram mode, it's probably my favorite of all of these modes, and I think it seems to work fairly well. However, while I still think it's cool that it allows you to turn your hurriedly drawn shapes into more precise ones, converts written words to text, and straightens your arrows, I can't help but feel that this mode has taken a step or two back since its debut on the first Elipsa. Back then, I really stress tested this mode and it could actually keep up surprisingly well at times. Trying to do this on the new Elipsa 2e provoked a variety of responses from my device, ranging from defiance in refusing to actually even try to transform these shapes, to the occasional success, to resulting in my device apparently deciding to gender itself live on camera.
You gave me the male symbol for that?
So this doesn't exactly inspire great confidence that the device will keep up with all but the most basic or exactingly made shapes. Next up, we have the insert equation feature, allowing you to write out math formulas with the device translating these into actual numerical symbols and even solving these for you if it can. The fatal flaw in this mode on the first Elipsa was that if you wrote one equation on one side of the box and wrote another on the other, they would usually get grouped together into one big equation. I will say it looks like Kobo tried to address this somewhat, as now if you try to write the equations on different levels within the box, the device will sometimes slot these as separate equations and list them one below the other. However, if you write two different equations on the same level within the box, even if on the opposite side from one another, there's a good chance that these will be combined together. Lastly, the insert freeform mode makes its return, and I, again, make the gesture of scratching my head on exactly why this mode exists. I understand a grid can be helpful for drawing certain subjects, but couldn't you just have added a grid or no grid button for the insert drawing feature? Anyway, if I'm being somewhat obtuse here and not seeing this mode's true purpose, maybe someone can let me know in the comment section below. Well, surely Kobo has listened and has finally included PDF as an export option for advanced notebook. I guess not. Yeah, I can see some stormy seas ahead for this device if Kobo doesn't make some major software improvements quickly. However, there is at least some sunny news to report here. Both the HTML and Word document exports of this notebook do seem quite faithful to the original, and the Word document version apparently now has no problem reproducing details like windows on houses. Something the insert freeform mode wasn't so good at on the first Elipsa. And the text file mode of exporting, well, it displays about as well as you'd expect. And that takes us to the big question, number 5. Has Kobo improved the writing experience on this device? The answer is pleasantly an overall yes. But even here there are one or two things that should be mentioned. The new stylus seems slightly slimmer than the original Elipsa stylus and now sports a single button to highlight text. One now erases by flipping the stylus and pressing the, actually fairly hard, plastic eraser to the Elipsa 2E screen. I will say that I found erasing much easier and faster than on the original Kobo Elipsa stylus. Erasing with that old stylus was simply a chore. One big downside on the new design though is that the new button on the side of the stylus is just too easy to accidentally press down on. And this happened to me many times while making this review. Regrettably, I can't see Kobo being able to fix this anytime soon, as it's purely a structural issue with the stylus. So it's something you'd need to learn to live with.
Thing here about this button. Yeah, not a big fan.
Battery life seems pretty adequate, as I was able to film all my segments for this review on a single charge, which is actually kind of impressive for such a thin and small stylus. Now, what about writing feel? I'll start by saying that I do find writing on the new Kobo Elipsa 2E with its new stylus better than the writing experience on the original Elipsa. It doesn't seem to make my wrists as tired as the original stylus when writing on the first Elipsa, and that's an important improvement. The feel isn't like writing on the Remarkable 2. Well, truth be told, they are a little bit similar actually. It's a bit like writing on an iPad with an Apple Pencil, but with considerably more grit to the screen surface and less screen flex. So while I think it's an overall improvement over the writing experience on the first Elipsa, it still wouldn't be my go-to writing choice. In case you're wondering, yes, both the old and the new stylus work on the first Kobo Elipsa as well as the 2E, and here's where this review took a pretty unexpected turn. While testing out cross-compatibility, I decided to write with both styli on both devices. And to my utter shock, I came to a very surprising conclusion.
This felt actually better to write with. I don't quite understand how it works. Let's immediately go back to here.
Yes, and I retested this and retested this, but every time I noticed that when writing with the older stylus on the Kobo Elipsa 2E, my wrists felt slightly less tired than after writing with the newer stylus on the 2E. Now you have to understand that the writing experience on the first Elipsa when it launched was, in my opinion, one of the worst feeling writing experiences on a modern e-reader. And while I think it improved with software updates over time, it still always felt like a slog to write on it. So then how would I account for this surprising result? Well, this is just a guess, but I do suspect that the Elipsa 2E's screen texture is very slightly different from that on the original Elipsa. It makes a slightly different sound when scratched at, the Elipsa 2E's screen seems to depress very slightly when pressed on firmly, where the original Elipsa remains totally inflexible. And areas displaying white on the Elipsa 2E screen do seem ever so slightly more white than the same areas on the original Elipsa. So I suspect that the Elipsa 2E screen has less overall friction, and therefore the new stylus, having a more smooth nib, requires more energy to control it and to stop it from slipping. Whereas the old stylus from the original Elipsa has more friction and perhaps requires less active control by one's wrists when writing. Whatever the reason, I think it's fair to say that I've enjoyed writing on the Elipsa 2E more than the original Elipsa using either stylus. Oh, One other note, if you're an owner of the original Elipsa and you're happy with that device, but aren't happy with the feel of writing on it with the original stylus, I found that when trying to write on the original Elipsa with the Kobo 2E's stylus, this did feel ever so slightly better. Not to mention the considerable extra ease with which one can erase. The new stylus is sold separately by Kobo, so you could try and see if you like this new writing experience without having to buy the whole Elipsa 2E. Yes, leave it to Kobo to create the strange situation where the new stylus may now be more suited to writing on the original Elipsa, and the original stylus may be now the better match for the new Elipsa 2E.
Kobo, if you have a plan here, I'd love to know it.
Reviewing the Kobo Elipsa 2E has been an exercise of weighing subtleties. This function is improved, but not so much that it's really excellent, or they've added something to the software only to take away some other much-loved function. There's been a lot of kind ofs and sort ofs and maybes in this review, and that's been pretty disappointing. In many ways, it feels like Kobo has done the bare minimum for upgrading this device. The first Elipsa was a pretty good device, and the Elipsa 2E is as well. It's just not that much has actually changed, and especially software-wise. Compared to the first Elipsa, I would say that the Elipsa 2E is the more well-rounded device, but that's largely due to the new frontlight and the overall faster performance. There are many problems that plagued the first Elipsa that still plague the Elipsa 2E. For example, Kobo has put so much promotion on the fact that you can write on these devices, but the Elipsa 2E really doesn't do much to address the core problems of the note-taking experience beyond some minor improvements to the overall note-taking feel on the device. Having said that, it's important to say that the Kobo Elipsa 2E isn't an altogether bad e-reading device. Objectively, and especially for the average e-reading consumer, there's a lot to like here. The improvements that have been delivered are important and for the most part meaningful. While the first Elipsa should have had all these features, it's honestly great to be able to custom tint the front light on the device now and zoom in and out of pages quickly and page through PDF documents at set zoom scales. It's also honestly a huge improvement to erase markings with the new stylus. And that's one improvement that I've always enjoyed. Yes, I'd even say that overall, that half a case cover is also kind of nice, as it does make the device considerably more portable and easy to just pick up. It's true to say that Kobo has definitely improved some things. It's an understatement to say that it still has a lot of work to do. To continue with my movie analogy at the beginning of this review, I'd say that the Kobo Elipsa 2E is a sequel that, while pleasing at times, leans too heavily on the goodwill generated by its predecessor. Instead of just patching plot holes, it needs to shine on its own merits. Truth be told, I think there is a really great e-reading device here. It just needs the attention to fine-tune the software to help the Elipsa 2E realize its full potential. Maybe, just maybe, going forward, Kobo will take the hint. So, Kobo, if you're listening, Number 1. Add more pen types for PDF documents. Please, this is such easy, low-hanging fruit for you guys to accomplish. People may want the choice of more than one pen type to use when annotating PDFs. And really, as e-ink industry players, you should be aware of that by now. Number 2. Add a cropping tool or specific PDF document reading modes to this device. Being able to set zoom modes is great, but build on this. Number 3. Bring back PDF definitions. Not much to say here. It should never have been taken away in the first place. Number 4. Perfect your palm rejection on the device so that unintentional page turns don't happen as often. Because, yeah, I'm sure I've never told you that before. Number 5. Fix your PDF document annotation exports. If I wanted my notes to look like jagged collections of dots, I would have drawn them that way. This shouldn't be hard, as the device already exports annotations made in the basic notebook as PDFs which look perfectly fine. Number 6. Fix the menu system in your notebooks. Have some other way to access your pen types and line thicknesses besides that tiny arrow. Also, please stop the bottom menu bar from automatically popping up every time you open the top menu bar. Seriously, together those two menu bars take up about a quarter of the entire page. Number 7. Do yourselves a big favor, Kobo. Have your own company executives actually try to write in your basic and advanced notebooks. Go on, do it. I dare you. Ask them to take down useful notes from company meetings in them. Once you do that, you might start to see why these modes are so hard to use. It's great to have a new lasso selection tool, but why can't we do more with it? It's great to have text conversion, but how will people actually want to use these converted notes in practice? Ask these questions. Transform your notebook modes from mere novelties into useful, stable, practical tools. Thanks for watching, and if you like this video, why not give it a digital like and subscribe to encourage more Inktelligent videos like this.
How long can I write on this ebook page before it jumps me to another page? Okay, that's your answer. As long as it took me to write that sentence, apparently.